Continuation of lymphatic system parts. So lymph nodes is a kidney-shaped small encapsulated bodies that located along the course of lymph vessels. It is an oval and rounded structure located along the lymphatics, and it is enclosed by a fibrous capsule that size of small seeds. They consist of cortex and medulla. So cortex, it is the outer portion where germinal center produce lymphocytes, while medulla, it is the inner portion where we can find the medullary cord. So this is the image of lymph nodes. So this is the lymph vessels, and we can see the medulla or the inner portion and the cortex or the outer portion. Most concentrated in our neck, armpits, and groin. Functions like a kitchen water filter. It purifies lymph before it enters veins. Macrophages, WBC or the white blood cell in the lymphatic sinuses engulf foreign bodies like antigens, which are presented to lymphocytes. Path of lymph flow through a lymph node. Lymph enter nodes through afferent lymphatic and flow through sinuses and exit through efferent lymphatic. So I will just discuss the processes. First is the afferent lymphatic that carry lymph node from peripheral tissue, and the afferent vessel deliver lymph to the subcapsular spaces, a meshwork of reticular fibers, macrophages, and dendritic cells. When we say dendritic cells, it is involved in our initiation of our immune response. So lymph next flow into the outer cortex, which contain B cells within germinal center that resemble those of lymphoid nodules. Lymph then flow through a lymph sinuses in the deep cortex, which is dominated by the T cells. Lymph continues into the medullary sinus. This region contains B cells and plasma cells. Last is the efferent lymphatics. To bring out, leave the lymph node at the ileum. These vessels collect lymph from the medullary sinus and carry it toward the venous circulation. From afferent lymphatics, which carry lymph to the lymph node, papasok yan sa dito, and then the afferent vessel will deliver lymph to the subscapular spaces such as fibers, macrophages, and dendritic cells, and then it will flow to the outer cortex, which contain B cells, next to the deep cortex, which contain T cells, and the lymph will continuously flow into the medullary sinus, and it will bring out at the efferent lymphatics. Tonsils. Multiple groups of large lymphatic nodules. Location is in mucous membrane of oral and pharyngeal activities, and we have these three parts of tonsils, which are palatal tonsils, pharyngeal tonsils, and lingual tonsils. This is the posterior view of our tonsils. We have pharyngeal tonsils, and we have also the tubal tonsils, palatal tonsils, and lingual tonsils, which is the base of our tongue. We also have this gland, or the largest lymphatic organ, roughly the size of our clenched fist or our hand, and it is located between the stomach and diaphragm. Structure is similar to a node. Capsule is present but no afferent vessel. Histology. Red pulp contains all the components of circulating blood, while white pulp is similar to lymphatic nodules. This is the visceral surface of spleen, the superior and anterior. And this is the image of spleen. We have this capsule, trabecula, splenicoids, and white pulp, and the red pulp. So let me tackle about the white pulp and the red pulp. White pulp of the spleen make up 25% of the splenic tissues, and thus important in fighting infections such as from viruses, and they are important in maintaining an immune response as well as producing antibodies. while the red pulp of the spleen make up the majority of the spleen, which is 75% splenic tissue. The red pulp is important in destroying or filtering abnormal red blood cell, unhealthy red blood cells, and as well as the old red blood cells. And the thymus gland is located behind the sternum and the mediastinum, and it contains of two lobes, which are the left and the right lobes, which release a hormone called thymosin, usually prominent in children and gradually increase in size till puberty. So the development of this is the infant is still conspicuous, puberty is maximum the size, and maturity is decreasing in size. So what is thymosin, by the way? So thymosin is actually involved in building up our immune system. So you're probably thinking, what actually the function of the thymus? Inside our bone marrow, we have these white blood cells, man, diba? And these white blood cells eventually differentiate into different type of specialized cells that are used by our immune system. And one of these cells is the T cells, also known as T lymphocytes, or T stands for thymus. So inside our bone marrow, we produce cells called our thymocytes, and these thymocytes are eventually carried into our thymus. And inside our thymus, the thymus uses this our hormone thymosin to basically test the immunity response of our T cells of our thymocytes. So if the thymocytes fail the test, if they are not able to pass, in that case, the thymus destroy our cells. But if the thymocytes eventually pass the test, then they mature, then they become our T cells. And then those T cells are released into our lymph system, and they basically end up in our lymph node, where can basically fight different types of disease, viruses, and infection. So that is the function of our thymus, to differentiation and maturation of T cells or lymphocytes.